This document was never meant to be public. Page 7, Section 4 reads, "If hikers report hearing their names called, do not investigate alone. Do not confirm what they heard. Report to district supervisor immediately." It looks like any other government memo. Black and white letterhead, clip signatures, bureaucratic phrasing. But once you read it, you realize it isn't about policy. It's about containment. The heading says Operational Guidelines. Category 7, Unusual Encounters. 14 pages. Each stamped internal use only. Do not reproduce. It circulated quietly through regional ranger offices in 2016. No public record, no press release. Just whispers, the new rules. Whoever wrote it was afraid, and afraid of something they couldn't name. 5 rules, all beginning the same way. Personnel will refrain. Every one of them drawn from an incident that happened somewhere deep in America's protected land. These aren't ghost stories. They're operating procedures written by people who saw too much and lived to file the paperwork. Tonight we'll read what was never supposed to leave the Park Service server. The memo, the rules, and the cases that forced them to exist. The earliest trace appears in a routing log from April 12, 2016, Western Region Headquarters, Portland, Oregon. Department, Division of Resource Protection. Subject, Consolidation of Category 7 events. No press office ever acknowledged it. But inside the network, supervisors began receiving a file labeled C7_guidelines_rev.pdf. Before the memo. Between 2010 and 2015, scattered reports kept clogging the incident database under odd tags. Sound anomaly. Environmental mimicry, lost/recovered. Each case dismissed individually. Fog, fatigue, faulty GPS. Yet the wording repeated. Heard voice calling my name. Empty camp still warm. Lights moving against wind pattern. In 2015, 5 events pushed the division past coincidence. Mount Jefferson signal, 2010. 4 rangers followed a distress whistle through fog. 2 hours later, their own recorded voices played back from the trees. Hollow Camp, 2012. A site found still warm, coffee brewing, occupants gone. Mirror Light, 2013. A floating white sphere near Yosemite erased 30 minutes of body cam footage. Residue Trail, 2014. A collapsed tent coated in gray protein powder that tested non-taxonomy organic. Double Call, 2015. Simultaneous radio responses from the same Ranger ID in 2 different valleys. Each ended with the note, recommend Category 7 classification pending. By spring 2016, the Western Region Chief ordered a working group. Their goal wasn't to solve the mystery. It was to control it. The language of control. The draft reads like it was written by lawyers afraid of monsters. Personnel will refrain from subjective interpretation of anomalous stimuli. Situations may necessitate temporary disregard of standard rescue protocols. No mention of ghosts. No mention of creatures. Just phrases that blur reality into procedure. Between the lines, a department terrified of its own records. Interview, retired supervisor Marla Reese. Reese, they sent the first draft after a bad year. Too many weird calls. They needed a code so we could write what we saw without sounding crazy. Reese retired in 2018. Her copy of the memo was one of the versions that later leaked. How it surfaced. On August 3, 2023, an anonymous user calling themselves Trail Depth posted a file to a backcountry forum. We were told not to share this. If you work in the field, you deserve to know what Category 7 really means. 14 pages of scans with blue ink margin notes signed only JR. 3 hours later, the thread was deleted with the message, Removed at request of Department of the Interior. But not before a freelance investigative journalist, Hannah Coe, downloaded it. She sent the PDF to 2 digital forensics labs. Both verified NPS intranet metadata and timestamp signatures. Publicly, the agency issued a short statement. No record of such document exists. Privately, several rangers recognize the routing codes as real. Anonymous ranger testimonies. Interviewer: before 2016, did you ever use the term Category 7? Ranger 1: no. We called them the weird files, stuff that didn't fit search and rescue. Interviewer: and after? Ranger 2: they told us to keep quiet. We still got the calls. Voices, lights, empty camps, but now it had a number. C7: contain, don't chase. Cultural fallout. Within months, copies circulated through encrypted emails among retired rangers. Some called it a hoax. Others called it insurance. One email read, "We don't look for answers out there. We just keep people from getting too close." For every official denial, another story surfaced from the field, quietly filed under Category 7, names redacted. Transition to Rule 1. Now that you know where the memo came from, we can read what it actually says. Page 5, Section 1. If personnel report hearing human voices from unverified locations. That's where the first rule begins, and where the memo stops sounding like bureaucracy and starts sounding like a warning. Rule 1. Do not investigate voices. The first rule appears simple. If personnel report hearing human voices or names called from unverified locations, they are to halt movement and await backup. Responding alone is prohibited. Do not acknowledge or repeat the call. On paper, it looks like an acoustic safety reminder until you hear the recordings that made it necessary. Case 19-0823E, Echo Point Incident. Location: Olympic National Park, Washington. Date: August 23, 2019. Reporting Officer: Ranger Evan Lyle. Dispatch logged a distress call at 23:02 hours. 2 female hikers, trapped near Echo Point. One voice only on the tape. Frantic, breathless. "She's still out there. I can hear her calling me." Then silence. Lyle reached the coordinates 40 minutes later. Fog heavy, temp 47 degrees Fahrenheit. One survivor, Dana Franks, 29, stood at the trailhead, flashlight trembling in her hand. Lyle: "Where's your friend?" Franks: "She keeps calling me. Listen." Dana: "Come back." It came from below the ridge, maybe 30 yards out. He radioed base. Possible injured hiker, responding to verbal call-out. They told him to hold position. He didn't. At 23:14, his mic caught half a sentence. "It sounds like," then a sharp pop of static. 20 minutes later, his locator beacon pinged 200 meters off trail. Rescue found him standing upright in heavy rain, eyes open, radio dangling, pulse steady. No injuries, no memory. Back at base, he repeated one line. It wasn't her. It used her voice. Addendum. Supervisor note. Personnel displayed transient amnesia and pupil dilation consistent with sensory shock. Recommend isolation of auditory stimuli reports. Term: voice bait. Entered informal usage. Sound engineers pulled the field audio later. 2 waveforms overlapped. One in normal range, one subsonic. The second frequency didn't match human speech patterns. That was the night Rule 1 became official. Case 21-0415B, Lost Creek Playback. Location: Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Date: April 15, 2021. Reporting Officer: Ranger Tanya Gibbs. At 2:07, Gibbs radioed dispatch. Audio anomaly. Multiple voices. Can't find source. She was leading a 4-person rescue team, searching for a missing camper. Body cam footage shows the group stopping when they all heard the same thing. Their own voices from ahead on the trail. Voice on recording, copy that, we're coming up on the creek. Gibbs on recording, that's me, that's my voice. Her teammate starts laughing nervously. Then the playback repeats, but the pitch shifts. Slower, deeper. A 5th voice joins in, whispering her name. They retreat 100 yards. The forest quiets instantly. Thermal scans show no warm bodies in range. At daylight, they replay the tape again. The voices are gone, replaced by white noise. Back at base, Gibbs adds to her report. We heard ourselves before we spoke those words. The memo's language, do not acknowledge, do not repeat, exists because of that line. They believe the phenomenon learns pattern through repetition. If you answer it, it learns faster. Ranger interview, field audio, excerpt. Interviewer, what do you do if you hear someone calling your name out there? Ranger Gibbs, you don't listen, you log the time, the direction, and you walk the other way. Interviewer, even if it sounds like a child? Gibbs, especially if it sounds like a child. Analysis section, internal brief, extract. Category 7A, events demonstrate adaptive mimicry. Auditory sources reproduce key emotional triggers. Distress, recognition, urgency. Personnel subject to exposure greater than 120 seconds show signs of disorientation and loss of temporal judgment. Unofficial translation. The longer you listen, the more it knows how to keep you there. That's why Rule 1 doesn't just forbid response. It forbids listening. After 2019, rangers started carrying tiny metronome apps, a steady click in their ears during night patrols. If the click stopped, they turned back immediately. It became a superstition, then a standard operating quirk, keep your rhythm, or it takes it. Rule 1 teaches them not to answer the forest. Rule 2 teaches them not to trust what's left behind. Rule 2, do not approach unattended camps. Page 9 of the memo adds a second directive, the one that makes even seasoned rangers uneasy. If an unoccupied camp is found in pristine condition with signs of recent use, personnel will mark GPS and withdraw until daylight. No attempt shall be made to document interior conditions or retrieve equipment. They call these Category 7B, temporal residue sites. On paper, the phrase means nothing. In the field, it means a camp that should be empty but isn't. Case File 200512C, Coldwater Ridge Incident. Location, North Cascades National Park, WA. Date, May 12, 2020. Reporting officers, Rangers Paul Nguyen and Lila Keener. A late-season closure check turned routine until their GPS flagged an active permit ping in a zone that had been closed for weeks. Nguyen and Keener hiked 3 miles up a frozen service road and found it just before dusk. 3 tents, perfectly pitched. Lanterns still burning, coffee steam curling from a pot. Boots lined by each flap like the owners had just stepped out for water. Nguyen, camp looks fresh. You smell that? Firewood. And soap. Keener, no footprints coming in or out. Let's mark and go. Nguyen, we don't have Rule 2 yet. Inside, sleeping bags were still warm. Thermal camera registered 98 degrees. Then the heat drained away in seconds, dropping to ambient like a flame snuffed out. They withdrew to a ridge overlooking the site for overnight observation. At 2:37, motion sensors triggered. Video shows 3 tall shapes standing where the tents had been. Stationary, facing the ridge. Keener described them as silhouettes watching a fire that was no longer there. Infrared read 0 heat. Then the lanterns flickered out one by one. By dawn, the clearing was bare ground. No tents, no gear, just 3 perfect circles of flattened grass. Supervisor brief excerpt. Category 7B sites display reconstructive behavior. Physical arrangements revert to pre-contact state within 6 hours. Recommend non-engagement until origin determined. Unofficial nickname in the field, Ghost Camps. Keener transferred to administration 2 months later. Her exit interview note, whatever kept those tents warm was still standing there when we left. Case 21-1104J, Desert Wash Site Alpha. Location, Grand Canyon National Park. Date, November 4th, 2021. Reporting Officer, Ranger Louise Holloway. Solo inspection of abandoned trail shelter. Found modern backpack with permit from 1987. Inside, map, canteen half full of water, and a handwritten note. Be back by morning. If I'm not, don't look. The paper tested fresh, fibers still moist from ink, but carbon dating on the map placed it decades old. Within an hour, Holloway's radio logged a duplicate transmission of his own voice, calling for backup from 5 miles away. Dispatch recorded 2 signals under his ID simultaneously. He left the pack and retreated. When the recovery team returned next day, the shelter was gone. Eroded foundation marks suggested it hadn't existed for years. Rule 2 went agency-wide a week later. The forest has its own way of returning to neutral. Whatever you find untouched out there, a camp, a fire, a note, it's not for you. Rule 3. Do not record light anomalies. Rule 3 arrived after the agency's experiment with new body cams. The memo reads, in the event of unidentified light sources or atmospheric luminescence not attributable to known equipment, personnel will disable all recording devices and avert gaze until dissipation. They call these Category 7C visual echo events. On its face, a simple camera safety note. In practice, a warning about what happened when someone kept filming. Case file 180719L. Mirror Lake Flare. Location, Yosemite National Park. Date, July 19, 2018. Witnesses, Rangers Caleb Stone and Renee Vaughn. At 2014 hours, Stone reported column of light descending through tree canopy. He activated body cam and filmed for 2 minutes, 42 seconds. When he played the footage back later, half the file was gone, replaced by a white frame and a low hum like power lines. Within 24 hours, he developed migraine and nausea. Within 48, complete temporary blindness in his right eye. Medical report, retinal burn pattern matching a spiral rather than a flash. The agency's digital forensics team found the camera log contained a new folder named Returning. No one created it. It contained one file, audio only, 2 minutes long. A voice, faint, repeating, "You should have looked away." Case file 220207F, Lantern Field. Location, Sequoia National Park. Date, February 7, 2022. Reporting Officer, Ranger Hollis Marin. Marin and 2 volunteers surveyed storm damage when they saw a line of orange lights drifting upslope. Assuming camp lanterns, they approached until each light rose vertically and stopped mid-air, frozen. The volunteers' phones glitched, screens whiting out to blank GPS maps. Marin ordered them back. When they returned to base, the volunteers' phones contained identical new photos in their galleries, pictures of the group from above. No drones were logged in the area. Internal analysis note. Category 7C phenomena display reciprocal observation. Entities or energies appear to record the observer in return. Recommend immediate aversion and data isolation. Unofficial nickname among rangers, Lantern Echoes. After the Sequoia incident, body cams shipped with physical lens shutters and a new training rule: look away first, ask later. Ranger debrief excerpt. Marin. I still see after images when I close my eyes. They're not the lights, they're our faces. Like it kept the last frame and plays it back whenever I blink. The memo doesn't say what the lights are, only what they do to people who watch too long. It treats vision like contagion. Next came Rule 4, and for Rangers, the most controversial one of all. Rule 4. Do not collect samples. Rule 4 came after too many field techs tried to bring proof home. The memo's phrasing is clinical. Physical material obtained from Category 7 environments will not be removed from site. Any attempt at transport or analysis constitutes breach of containment. They call these Category 7D residual matter events. Case File 17-0611T, The Residue Trail. Location: Rocky Mountain National Park, CO. Date: June 11, 2017. Reporting Officer: Ranger Becca Torres. Torres and a biologist located a collapsed two-person tent coated in gray powder. Every surface, ground sheet, sleeping bag, boots, dusted evenly as if sprayed. Samples sealed in vials. 2 days later, the vials turned clear, contents gone. Glass still airtight. By the end of the week, the biologist reported flu-like symptoms and a smell of ozone that followed him home. When he tried to describe it on recording, his voice echoed half a beat behind. The memo references this event directly. Residual matter demonstrates temporal instability and cognitive resonance. Unofficial nickname: Ghost Dust. Case 22-0913K, Marble Cave Specimen. Location: Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Date: September 13, 2022. Reporting Officer: Ranger Omar Klein. Klein retrieved a translucent film from a rock wall that shimmered under infrared but not visible light. He placed it in a plastic evidence pouch. 10 minutes later, the pouch was empty and the film reformed on the wall. Base Lab analyzed the bag. Polymer structure rearranged as if heat treated from within. After this, Rule 4 became mandatory training. Klein briefing: out there, nothing wants to be studied. It just wants to stay where it is. The memo doesn't say what the material is. It only warns what happens when you move it. Rule 5. Do not travel alone after midnight. Personnel will operate in pairs between 0000 and 4 o'clock hours. Solo patrols prohibited under penalty of suspension. Everyone assumed fatigue protocol until the Hollow Mesa incident. Case File 19-1210R, Hollow Mesa Loop. Location: Arches National Park, UT. Date: December 10, 2019. Witness: Ranger Russ Delaney. Delaney logged a solo loop inspection at 012. At 047, his GPS tracks split, two identical routes diverging in opposite directions. At 1:05, dispatch received his voice twice, one calm, one panicked. Search crews found him at dawn, sitting beside his truck facing the trailhead. He insisted he had been talking with his partner all night. He didn't have one. Later review of body cam shows a figure matching his build walking ahead with a light. No reflection of Delaney's own headlamp in its shadow. After that, Rule 5 was added. Redacted sections. Half the memo is blacked out. What remains visible? Field entities demonstrate adaptive learning. Mimicry threshold increases with attention. End of Category 7 Guidelines. Margin note in blue ink. Not end. Pause. 6 years after its creation, the memo remains classified. Publicly, it doesn't exist. But its rules still guide every ranger who patrols after dark. Don't listen. Don't follow. Don't collect. Don't walk alone. Because whatever the forest is trying to teach us, it learns faster than we do. What a memo tells rangers not to look, not to listen, and not to collect evidence. Maybe it isn't protecting them from the forest. Maybe it's protecting the forest from them. The memo leaked, vanished, and then returned in fragments. Screenshots on forgotten forums, photocopies folded into ranger manuals, whispers passed in training camps. Every few months, a new version appears. One more page, one less redaction. No one claims authorship. Every header carries a different date. One of them, dated April 2024, adds a final line. Category 7. Status. Escalating. Continue silence protocol. You can choose not to believe this document exists, but the forest doesn't care whether you believe. It only cares that you keep listening